June the 16th marks the International Day of the African Child. It aims to improve the education of children across the continent. While here in Nigeria, groups have used the occasion to call on the government to get youngsters back into school. Ferdinand Duroha reports.
Sub-Saharan Africa has the most out-of-school children in the world. It's a particular problem in Nigeria, where more than 10 million children don't attend classes. That's something the Agenda 2040 is looking to address. It aims to ensure children across the continent have a safe and healthy childhood with access to education and other basic necessities by the year 2040. But activists say issues of female genital mutilation, sexual abuse, child marriage and child labor are still a huge problem.
Because we believe that the children are a vulnerable group, and African children are faced with difficulties as a result of the challenges across the country, the insecurity, the poverty level, and what have you. So this day is special to commemorate the African child, to inspire them, to give them hope, and to support their education.
We want an Africa fit for children to grow, fit for children to learn, fit for children to be nourished, fit for children to explore, fit for children to invent, fit for children to do what they have been trained to do, all the good things that they have been trained to. We don't want an Africa fit for children to commit crimes. We don't want an Africa fit for children to be violent. No, that is not what we want.
The day is also about giving children a voice. Youngsters took part.
21. Financial intelligence. Among many topics and subjects taught in school, financial intelligence is exempted. This is also another big reason why people regard schooling as a scam. Can you imagine spending over 20 years of your life schooling, yet know nothing on how to manage and multiply money?
I want the government to bring more students to schools. I want the government to take children to school. I mean, there are many alumnaries, there are many children begging outside there. So I want the government to take them to school, to sponsor them.
So I want him to protect our countries, to make us educated and to guide us and to bring more children to school.
The Day of the African Child has been celebrated on June the 16th since 1991. It commemorates those who took part in the Soweto uprising in 1976, when 20,000 black school children protested the poor quality of education in South Africa. They were met with stiff police brutality, and many were shot and killed. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
All right, thank you so much there, Ferdinand. Well, for more on this, we're being joined by Dorothy Njemanze, a human rights activist and filmmaker. Well, before I start even jumping off, glad to have you in the studio, Dorothy.
Thank you for having
Maybe
me.
I should even start there, the question of filmmaking, how you can use that to influence our young people growing up in so many ways.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a lot of times, the current day reality with our films now is that presence of a child in a film makes people think that the film is appropriate content for children to watch. All films that have children in it are not appropriate for children to watch. There should be deliberate investment in making age-appropriate content that is coming-of-age films to help children grasp and understand society better, to highlight things that children deal with in ways that they would understand a lot better. That's a huge gap that needs to be fixed in the film industry, the film and the creative industry generally. So presence of a child in a film doesn't mean that it is developmental content for the child.
Let's even talk about why the International Day for the African Child was even set aside in the first place, where you had 20,000 children, brave, courageous children, standing up for their rights, saying we want to be educated, we want good quality education, and we even want to be taught in our own, languages.
Yes, very important.
How important is that even today as the day is marked?
So where do we start from? Even look at COVID, the impact of COVID, for instance, where a lot of people had to lean towards technology for education, to bridge educational gaps. What were those in the villages doing? What were the families that do not have Android phones doing? I know that a lot of families had to take turns with their parents' phones. You know, the children had to take turns with their parents' phones to be able to access education of some sort, right? So the people who are unable to have those kind of things, what happened? I am also aware of reports where people who needed to go and stay with friends that had, you know, Android devices, for instance, or, you know, higher-end gadgets, for instance, you know, that were exposed to issues of abuse. So until everybody is given proper thoughts, irrespective of your, you know, where you fall, where you fit into the social strata in Nigeria, then there's a very huge gap. So we're not only talking about access to the content, you know, the language of the content. We're now talking about access to the language of the content, especially considering the different realities. So many private schools have taken certain initiatives. Are public schools able to take the same initiatives that private schools are taking? Yeah. You know,
but these there's a huge gap between public and private.
So we do know that the question of education is quite challenging, especially what bandits are doing in the north, you know, where schools are being attacked. But yeah, we talk about education, but is that really the only challenge that children, our children, or children all over the world, particularly here in Nigeria, are having?
The primary source of education will be the life we live. And what life are children in Nigeria, for instance, exposed to, right? It means, what do they see as the idea of a market? What do they see as the idea of religious institutions? What do they see as the idea of formal or informal education? What do they see as the idea of access to justice? That is the basic education that we give. And it's about time that the government continually puts the money where the mouth is. If that is the future of the country, or the future of our tomorrow, if that's our tomorrow, and we agree that that's our tomorrow, then it means that, for instance, there's no reason why the Child Rights Act is not domesticated in all states of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. There's no reason why there's no gender-sensitive budgeting. There's no reason why we're still begging, for instance, for a forensic laboratory in Abuja. So you're talking about how you want to ensure that everybody is safer overall. To track, in incidents of crime, if you need to do some tracking to track criminals, it's a minimum of 30,000 naira cost. How many people? Yes, to track a line. And that is one tracking. Sometimes you need to do multiple tracking. And so imagine those who are grappling with the incidences of abductions, what they're going through. I don't know if you follow the issues with the Kaduna State.
Yes.
It's horrific. It's now like a threat to life to say have children. People don't know what to do with it. However, we need to look at it from a holistic perspective. The child is learning everything. Learning is not only what happens in the formal institutions. So what happens? Are there sexual harassment policies in the formal and informal institutions, including the religious institutions? Access to justice for children, for instance, who have been, whether it is sexually violated or otherwise, is it a reality? When the courts were closed, how did it impact on children that needed justice? Everything that happens in Nigeria has a direct impact on children. Our PVC is directly, and the function or the power of our PVC, the permanent voters card, is directly linked to the well-being of every child in Nigeria.
So apparently there is a need.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the holistic
it's all
picture.
encompassing, and it's
that's
not
the
just
holistic picture.
It's not just education, just like Ndi pointed out. What about the care for the physical and mental health of the African child? How important is that? Is that even being addressed at all? And what are those reforms you'd like to see so that come 2022, the state of the Nigerian child would be better than what we have now?
Okay, so I work with the Dorothy Njemanze Foundation. It's a survivor-run not-for-profit that attends to survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. Over the COVID-19 period, and not just over the COVID-19 period, why I make mention to the COVID-19 lockdown period is because we had an increase.
Yeah, made it even more apparent.
We had an average report of 6 to 10 cases weekly, but during the COVID-19 lockdown, we had 4 to 7 daily reported, majority of minors, and now we're back to, average of 4 cases daily, and majority are minors. Now, we had a lot of minors who got pregnant. minors do not have a means of livelihood in Nigeria. Minors cannot vote or be voted for. However, they need to pay for the medical services, you know, to prevent pregnancy, where they are unable to do those, or they even do it in places that are inappropriate. They still need to pay for their medical costs and the medical costs of their rapists, if people like us get on board. And then going forward, to engage with law enforcement to report cases. I don't understand
what you mean by paying for the medical cost of their rapist.
Because a baseline assessment has to be done, a baseline analysis has to be done at the time of report of, for instance, sexual violence. So is this person HIV positive? And so when this person, the victim starts manifesting certain symptoms, you know that, oh, this person had syphilis, or this person had so and so and so. And so that explains this. So medical corroborations, which are tenable in law courts, are things that come to play here, right?
And somebody has to bear the cost.
Somebody has to bear the cost. The state is not bearing the cost. And that is a very huge anomaly. You go to law enforcement, payment of police file, children are duty bound to bear the cost. And then payment to visit the crime scene, children are duty bound to bear the cost. And then payment to mobilize state prosecutors to make appearances in court, children are duty bound to bear that cost.
Can't we correct that in 5 seconds? Is there any way to correct that?
Yes, the way to correct it is gender-sensitive budgeting and then implementation of the different things. Let the provisions of the Child Rights Act be taken seriously. Let's also have specific, the 1% consolidated revenue fund that is supposed to be allocated to solving, handling emergencies should actually be implemented. That's, let's us walk the talk.
Dorothy Njemanze, human rights advocate and filmmaker. Very brilliant. Thank you very much. And
Indeed.
Continue to do what you do.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.